We did Daf Yud, right? We did Daf Yud. Excuse me. Thank you. We're going to start on top of Yud Aleph. Echidami Shemus Mufakim. Yeah, we learned on Shavuos 9. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. Most of our learning we should have based on English immediately. The Gemara was discussing documents that come from a non-Jewish court. He said that for a get, it wasn't a problem because the get, we don't actually need the signatures of the get because we can use other type of witnesses. It's called Eidei Masira, witnesses that are witnessing the delivery of the get. And that's the main thing according to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar holds that the witnesses that see the delivery of the get is more important than the witnesses that sign in the get. So we said that it's actually not a problem to have a secular court divorce as written by a Jew. The scribe was a Jew, but the witnesses that are signing it are regular court people, not Jewish people. We said that that wasn't a problem because we don't need those witnesses anyway. Following the opinion of Reb Shimon right now, that Reb Shimon holds that, what are you concerned about? You're concerned that maybe you're going to use the witnesses from the document to also witness the delivery of the get. The witnesses in the document are clearly not Jewish. If it wasn't so clear if they were Jewish or not, then that would be a concern. That's called Shemus She'eina Muvakim. But if it's Shemus Muvakim, if the names that we're using in the get are so clearly not Jewish, we're never going to make a mistake and say that they can also watch the delivery of the get. So now the Gemara says, Hey Chidami Shemus Muvakim. What do you mean when you say that the names of the get are so absolutely, how do they say Muvakim? How do they translate? Unambiguous. They're unambiguously not Jewish names. So Amar Papa Gain Hormes. Let's say the name was Hormes. Hormes. That's actually a name of a kosher bakery in Toronto. But this would not work. Hormes or Avdina bar Shibsai, Avudina or Avudina. The son of Shibsai is also a non-Jewish name. Now, Shibsai over here, they're very careful. Taisa says that Shibsai with an aleph is a non-Jewish name, but Shabsi without an aleph is a Jewish name. So the difference is if it has an aleph or not. Does Shabsi have an aleph? That's a big discussion. According to this Taisvus, Shabsi does not have an aleph. Yeah. Who else? Bar Kidri. That's another name. Bati. Bati, Taisvus says, well, Bati without an aleph is a Jewish name, but Bati with an aleph is a non-Jewish name. Nakamuna. Nakamuna is another non-Jewish name. Okay, probably Roman or Greek names. Aval Shemus She'eina Muvakim Mai. What would be the halacha if it's the names are not unambiguous? Rather if you have ambiguous names, are they Jewish or not Jewish? Then that would not be acceptable. So Reb Shimon that allows a get from a non-Jewish court, it's only because the names are unambiguously not Jewish, which means that if it is ambiguously ambiguous if it's Jewish or not, what's a name like, I don't know, Harry Smith is not Jewish, clearly.
No way.
Yeah, well, and a very not Jewish name would be like, something like Christian, Jesus, right? But let's say there's a name that, who knows? The guy's name is David. David could be, I don't know if he's Jewish or he's not Jewish, So If that's the case, where you're going to make a distinction between if the get's kosher between Jewish names or clearly not Jewish names or possibly not Jewish names, that's going to be your whole difference. So then, Adatani Seifa, in place of saying at the end, we said, the only time that it's going to be invalid is if it's done by a non-court, just by an individual. A plain person made the document, but it wasn't a court. The Gemara says, if that's the case, then listening bedida. Whenever we want to give a contrast, we want to give a contrast of the main point. So what we're doing now is we're saying that Reb Shimon holds that it's going to be kosher if it's unambiguously not Jewish names, because we're not going to mistake that and use them for the witnesses of the delivery of the get. But if it is not unambiguous, if it's possibly a Jewish name, possibly not a Jewish name, it's unclear, then it's going to be invalid. So why, when we gave the contrast in the Mishnah of what's valid and what's not valid, did we use two other things? We said, well, not two other things. We used one other thing. We said, in the courts, it's kosher, but by a hedyot, but by an individual, it's not kosher. We should have said in the courts, it's kosher if it's an unambiguously not Jewish name. And if it's not an unambiguous name, then it's not kosher. We missed the contrast that we wanted to bring out. We could have brought it out with the case that we're saying itself. A typical Gemara logic, which the Gemara calls liflig b'lisnei b'dida. Why don't you divide the case that you're discussing and say the two options in that case? The Gemara says, that's exactly what we're doing. What we're saying is like this. When do we say that it's going to be kosher? That's only if the names are unambiguously non-Jewish names. But if the names are not unambiguously not Jewish, they're possibly Jewish. So then, then it's as if it was made by a non-court, and then it's going to be invalid. Okay, so far we've explained the opinion of Reb Shimon. Okay. I can give you another teretz to the question that we just asked. If Reb Shimon is making a contrast between Shemas Muvhakim or Shemas Shenim Muvhakim, which means are the names ambiguous or unambiguous. So why don't we mention that in the Mishnah? Why don't we mention that contrast in the Mishnah? Instead, we mention the different contrast comes along that the Gemara gives us a new answer. The Gemara says that the contrast that we thought was not in Reb Shimon's opinion. Contrast that you thought was happening here, that's actually in the rabbi's opinion. Seifa asan legitei mammon. When it says in the Seifa, it says, we only mention that it's invalid if it was done by a hedyot. That's talking about regular documents. And that's not according to Reb Shimon, that's talking according to the rabbis, according to the Tanakama, that they said that regular documents are kosher, but they're not going to be kosher if it's done by a hedyot. It's in the rabbi's opinion. It has nothing to do with Shemus Muvhakim. This concept of Shemus Muvhakim, of names that are unambiguously not Jewish, that was only in the opinion of Reb Shimon that would allow that. So we asked, why don't you give a contrast? Why didn't we use the contrast of the Mishnah to be exactly what Reb Shimon himself would hold? That contrast. We said we're not talking about the contrast. The Mishnah was not Reb Shimon. That was the opinion of the rabbis. Should I go over this? Should I explain, make it clear?
The problem I have is every time you say unambiguously.
I know that throws you off. So let's discuss it like this.
And I did review the case. So now I thought I had it.
Mishnah said that documents, civil documents that come from a court are kosher. Not a get. Gentile courts. Yeah. Regular documents of ownership, of sale, of these things that they're done in a court, they're kosher, but not a divorce or a document that was freeing a slave, shikhr, the deed of manumission. Those are not kosher from a non-Jewish court. Reb Shimon says those are also kosher from a non-Jewish court. How is that possible that it's kosher from a non-Jewish court? Reb Shimon says
contradict the Mishnah.
No, Reb Shimon is one of the Tanaim.
Oh,
He can argue, he is in the Mishnah. He's arguing, he's a sage that has the rights to say in the Mishnah. So he's saying that it is kosher. So we said, how could it be kosher? It's they don't have anything to do with Gittin and Kedushin, and they're not valid. They can't write these documents. They can't sign it. They said, no, what we're talking about is that it was written by a Jewish scribe. And they're just the witnesses on the document. And we're following the opinion that we don't need witnesses on the document. We only need witnesses of the delivery of the get. We said, yeah, but if the document has witnesses that aren't Jewish, you may end up relying on those witnesses to use them also for the delivery of the get. And that we would make a mistake to say, they signed on it, they also watched the delivery, which that would be problematic. Reb Shimon says, no, we're dealing with the case where those people that signed on the get are so not Jewish that the name is Jesus in Christian or something, Muhammad.
So this doesn't have to do with what we previously argued, whether or not the get takes place at the signing or at the delivery? Because that would also.
No, yes, it's very important that we establish that the main witnesses of the get are the delivery of the get. We have to accept that. Okay, so now, basically what Reb Shimon just told us is that if the names on the get are very non-Jewish, so then we can actually use that get. If the names on the get are somewhat Jewish, we can't use the get, right? Because then we may mistake them and say, oh, we can also use them for the delivery, which would be a problematic. So it's better to have a totally non-Jewish names on the get, so we know not to use them for the delivery. So then we just asked, but in the Mishnah we said that when did we say that it wasn't good? That's if it wasn't in a court. I says, you should have told me, when do we say it's not good? When the names are possibly Jewish names, when it's ambiguous name. You should have said that, because that's the contrast in Reb Shimon. You have two answers. First answer was, that's what we meant to say. If the names are ambiguous names, then it's as if it was done in not in a court, and it's invalid. It's as if it was done not in a court by a hedyot, by just a regular person. Second answer we gave was, when did we mention that it's not valid? And that's only if it's done not in a court. That's not even in Reb Shimon. That's the opinion of the rabbis that said that other documents are kosher in a court. When are they not kosher? If it's not from a court. In other words, regular. Why would it not be kosher if it's a document that's not from a court? Because the people don't care about lying. If it's in a court, then they have a reputation to maintain. But if it's not in a court, then they don't care about their reputation. They just, lied again. Okay.
I don't know if the scribes are Jewish.
We didn't actually say that clearly in the Gemara, but that's what we're understanding, because it had to be done lishma. Reb Shimon would never allow it if it wasn't written lishma. It has to be written lishma.
So the Gentile courts usually have a Jewish scribe.
In this case, there was a Jewish scribe. Yeah, Rabbah and Rava, about the reason why a messenger needs to say b'fanei nechta b'fanei nechta. Yeah, so that would not work together. We asked over there, would Rava's view that's concerned about the signatures fit with Rabbi Elazar? We said, no, it won't fit with Rabbi Elazar. It only fits with Rabbi Yehuda. We said the author of the Mishnah was Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that we need the signatures to be lishma, and we need. You're right. That's a valid point. Yeah, we're putting that on hold because that the first Mishnah was not following Rabbi Elazar. Yeah, now we are following Rabbi Elazar. Okay, Tanya. For the middle of Yud Aleph and Mid Aleph 11a. Start in a brayso. Amar Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Elazar bar Yosi says, this is a different Rabbi Elazar. The other Rabbi Elazar was Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. He was the one that said about the signatures are not necessary on the get. This is Rabbi Elazar bar Yosi. It says, Kacham Reb Shimon lachacham b'Tzidan. Reb Shimon had a conversation with the sages in Tzidan. Tzidan is a city. What is it today? Say a name of it. I don't know, it doesn't matter, at least in our simple reading of the text. It says Leinechliku Rabbi Akiva v'Chachamim al kol ashtaris elam berkosh lev d'Kachavim. Shav pi shechis meim lev d'Kachavim ksherim v'afil Gittin Daf v'shechruri avadim. Apparently, there was a machlekes, besides for a machlekes between Reb Shimon and the sages, there was an earlier machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the sages. And Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi is saying over this machlekes, he says that machlekes, Reb Shimon, it tells the Chachamim that the earlier machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim, that wasn't about if a get or a get shicher or star shicher. A get is a Jewish divorce, a star shicher is the deed of manumission. If that's kosher in a secular court, that's of course kosher. The whole machlekes was if it was done not in a court. Rabbi Akiva says that it's kosher even not in a court. The Chachamim Paislim, the Chacham say that it's going to be invalid, not in a court. That even if it's not in a court, a get is going to be kosher, and so will a deed of manumission be kosher. The question is, why should it be kosher? If you can't trust the sale, a document of a sale, why would you trust the get? The answer is because the get, we don't rely on signatures anyway. So we don't trust it out of court. A sale document, a regular, just mundane document of anything. But when it comes to a divorce, where we don't rely on the signatures anyway, so then we can use the document that came from there, because we're relying on.
To be from Gentiles, no? Or not necessarily.
Well, the signatures are supposed to be Jewish signatures.
Right. Yeah.
But if it's coming from a secular court, then the signatures are going to be the Gentile signatures. But we're saying that we're not relying on those anyway. So it's no problem with coming from a secular court. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Afelu ksherim b'makom she'ein Yisrael chesman." Of makom she'Yisrael chesman, like he says, well, it's not so simple. If it's a place where Jewish people sign, they allow Jewish people to sign on the get in the secular court. They allow Jewish scribes, Jewish witnesses in the secular court. Let's say the secular court would allow Jewish witnesses. Then we have a concern that we may rely on the witnesses that signed on the document, that they're also witnessing the delivery of the document. If the court allows Jewish witnesses into their court to do the signatures, then you may end up using those people, which if they're really Jewish, then it's no problem. But if the names in there are just David and whatever, William, or whatever, so we don't know if he's Jewish, if he's not Jewish, maybe that was his name, maybe it's Jewish guy, maybe not. And then you're going to end up, the guy's going to say, oh, it's for sure Jewish. It was in the court and they allow the Jewish, they always allow Jewish, but for sure it's Jewish. And then they're going to use him for the delivery as well.
What are these signatures? Are signatures a signature of the scribe who wrote the get, or is it?
No, the signatures are witnesses. You see, usually today, this is why it's confusing. Usually today, they have the person that's involved in whatever it is, sign whatever document. When you're getting a mortgage or something, you sign 100 papers. You're the guy that's getting it. You sign. You do all the signing. By in these traditional documents, it's two witnesses are signing that they saw you lift up a cloth that you agreed to everything that's written, and you wouldn't really sign anything. Just like the ksuba, the husband doesn't sign the ksuba.
So back to
right. It's witnesses that sign the ksuba. What do the witnesses say? That we saw the husband agree to everything that it says in the ksuba. So we're not having the husband do any signing here. It's the witnesses are signing. Now these witnesses.
And that's the bottom point. The witnesses. That's what really matters.
Yeah. Now there's a machlekes which witnesses are the main ones. It's the witnesses that signed in the document or the witnesses that see the delivery of the document. We've been following now that the witnesses that see the delivery of the document are the main ones. So even though we have signatures here, but if they allow Jewish witnesses into the court, then that would actually make things worse, because we may end up thinking that the people that signed on the document are also the ones that watch the delivery, and we didn't know if they were really Jewish or not.
If you said the people who sign, Jewish people sign the documents, like you were giving certificate. But if this is going to their shaliach, when they sign the document, that doesn't mean that it's been accepted. Or we just going the idea that she could be divorced by Korfa. I mean,
No, right now we're not discussing the shliach. The shliach was something that came up
so
in the
all
beginning.
this signing is just the fact that the husband is
Agrees.
giving the get, but
Right.
we don't know that it's been accepted.
Right.
Or anything.
Right. Then the next step would be the delivery of the get.
But the person who's delivering it has to say the
Right.
So,
Right. That's only if it's coming from overseas.
oh, that's right.
But over here, it could be that both the husband and wife showed up in court. They got their divorce done. And then we're going to say later that, you know what, those witnesses that did the thing, they're not Jewish. And maybe they were the ones that did the, that watched the delivery also.
There's two different, there's those that watch the delivery and there's the witnesses. Those are
Two separate sets of witnesses, but they may be the same ones. Yeah. Often today they're the same ones. The witnesses that sign on the get are the same ones. It doesn't have to be the same ones, but it's often the same ones.
So we're looking for signatures of the witness, not so much the deliverer.
Well, right now we're going to have
Those are the signatures. They're the ones that
right.
are
The signatures of the witnesses that are in the get are not so significant to us because the main witnesses are the ones that watch the delivery. The only problem is that we may confuse and use the ones that signed on the get to watch the delivery as well. And that may not be valid because we're doing it in a secular court. We don't know who it is.
In the case of marriage, the only people that sign, the two witnesses are signing on the ksuba. It's technically isn't the marriage document. The only ones who really count are the ones who check the ring out and
Yeah.
see the delivery of the kedushin,
Right,
right? And then nobody's even signing anything.
right,
So I don't even worry that you don't even you might sign anything
right,
from there.
right. You don't. That's a good point. That's a good point. That you mean saying to proof to Rabbi Elazar's opinion. Yeah, it could be that in that discussion, it could be that's brought over there. But say at a wedding, one of the witnesses, the rabbi that was doing the wedding, wasn't sure about how observant he was. He was one of the witnesses. He didn't want him to be a witness because that's the main part of the marriage is to be the witness. He told him, you know what? Why don't you make the brachas of the Masada Kedushin, which in public that's the bigger honor. So he gave him to. He said, really? Actually, he said, yeah. You do this. Say the brachas. And the rabbi, was the witness on the Kedushin. It was a way of not embarrassing him, and also, he gave him a bigger honor. The brachas don't affect the. Yeah, but it would be better for him to make the bracha than to invalidate the wedding. Right? Okay.
I heard this thing once. I don't know if it was Jokoville where the woman wasn't necessarily Sula, so they wrote Sula, and but they read it, so that people read Sula, but it really said Sula.
Oh, Sula. That's funny. Yeah,
I heard that once. I didn't know if it was real or if it was just.
yeah. Okay. So the Gemara says, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is concerned about if it's a place that they allow Jewish witnesses into the court to sign, then that could be a problem. And but if it's a place that they allow Jewish witnesses, then you can't do that. The Gemara asks the question: why don't you make a decree? Because you may confuse if they allow in some places Jewish witnesses, then that could create a problem. To make a decree on other places that don't allow Jewish because of the places that do allow. We don't want confusion. Some places allow, some people don't. So the Gemara says, Shema b'Shema me'achlet. what are we concerned about? We're concerned about sometimes the witnesses have absolutely non-Jewish names, and then that's going to be fine. Sometimes they don't have absolutely non-Jewish names. That's going to be problematic because maybe they were the ones that were used, thinking that they were Jewish and they're really not. But so that was a concern. But asr ba'asr le'michlaf. But we're not going to confuse places. We can establish customs in each place, and that's not going to be a problem. But we still won't be able to ascertain if the names are not perfectly non-Jewish, that if the person was Jewish or not. Okay, so basically what we're saying is that when it comes to making a decree, we would make a decree that maybe using this type of name is acceptable, but using that type of name is not acceptable. We're going to say it's all not acceptable. But to say, that's what we're going to do in places where they allow Jewish people to sign. We're going to say it's all not acceptable. Because maybe we'll confuse totally non-Jewish names with ambiguously Jewish names. But to confuse one place with another place, that's not a concern for us. And if they don't allow Jewish witnesses inside, then that would be acceptable because we're not relying on the non-Jewish witnesses anyway, because we have our own witnesses at the delivery. Okay. Ravina Savar la'achshure b'chenufaisa da'armai. Ravina wanted to accept documents that were made. Chenufaisa sounds like it's some sort of fair. Does it say like some sort of market? Fair? Assembly of what? Of Aramean judges? Uh-huh. I understood that it wasn't actually a court, and it's just they were just there, and he wanted to accept documents from there. We're not talking about Gittin, we're talking about other documents.
The report says in English, rather it was an assembly of dignitaries that sat in judgment on a temporary unofficial basis.
Oh, uh-huh. Sounds like arbitrators or something. It wasn't an actual court. Uh-huh. The juries is usually from at least by us. The jury is the public people. Here, these are judges, but they're not in the court. They're on the side. So Amalei Rafram Erkoistanan. Rafram tells to Ravina, you can't use them because it needs to be actually in the court. Otherwise, we don't trust that they're trying to uphold their reputation. Reputation here is very important in giving us trust that it's valid. Amar Rava. Rava says, Haishtara Parsa the Masrina Le Bapisad Yisrael Magbinan Beidmin Bechari. If you have a Persian document, it's written in Persian, and it was given handed over in front of Jewish witnesses. You say that you're allowed to collect from that. Let's say the document said in it that Ruvain owes Shimon money. Shimon lent him Ruvain money. Ruvain has to pay it back, right? So Ruvain, so Shimon is allowed to collect based on that Persian document. He's allowed to collect the money from Ruvain. Ruvain owes him the money. But what properties is he allowed to collect? Only property that Ruvain actually has, not property that Ruvain had sold to someone and there was a lien on it. He can't go and take it away from a purchaser, from Ruvain. He can only take it what Ruvain has at hand. That's called B'nei Chari, which means free property, not property that's been sold.
Parsa Persian.
Parsa is Persian. The Gemara says, "V'layadi lemikre," but the Jewish people don't know how to read the Persian. They don't know what's in the document. Says no, b'diyadi. These guys happen to know how to read Persian. Okay, we're surprised about that, but okay, some Jewish people could read Persian. But the way that we prepare our documents are different than the way they prepare their documents. We would put on a certain type of the way it would be the leather, the parchment was tanned. It would have some sort of like coating on it that if they would ever erase something, it would be very clear that it was erased. They didn't have that. So what could happen in a document? It says, Shimon lent Ruvain $5, so they could have erased the 5 and put in 500. And you won't be able to know. And then you have the signatures on the bottom, and it's the same. Well,
like the new checks that they have nowadays. When you order checks, you can order 20 checks for forged proof checks.
Oh, if they try to erase it, it takes away from the paper. Uh-huh. The Gemara says b'dafitzan. We're talking about that they prepared that document as well properly, the way we do it. We have a rule when we write documents. We summarize everything in the document on the last line, right before the signatures. What is that?
And blah, blah, blah.
Like to fill in the blank. So we have to summarize, and they don't do that. Maybe they can add in another detail before the signatures. Well, it says bid mahada. We're talking about that. It was actually they actually repeated what the content of the document was in the last line, which makes the document kosher even according to us. The Gemara says, if they went through all of this, so then why can you only collect from Reuven's property that he has at hand? Maybe you should even be able to take from the property that he sold that had a lien on it and collect from there. Gemara says, less they color. No, there's a problem. Because when we have a document that has witnesses, Jewish witnesses on it, the witnesses then go and talk about what we signed a document today, or who sold what. It's like the gossip of the town, and then everyone knows, oh, he sold the property and he had, or he loaned it. This was a loan. He borrowed. So because of that, it creates a rumor in the town of, and everyone hears that this person borrowed money. Then when he's going to sell the property, people are going to know not to buy it because he owes money, and the collector, the creditors are going to come and take the property away. So you can't. So we can actually hold it against the person that purchased it by saying you should have known better because everyone knew that this person owed money. But if it was done by a Persian document, so then maybe no one knows that the person really owes money, and the fact that the purchaser bought it can't hold it against him that he bought it, because how was anyone supposed to know? Okay.
Is the issue mostly because you need other people to translate the document?
That was one issue here, that the people that signed on it, or the people that are watching it being delivered, here the concern was that the people that were witnessing the delivery of this document, we were concerned that they didn't know what it said in it anyway. We said no, they do know what it said in it. Okay. Rish Lakish asks Rabbi Yochanan a question. However, we're talking about this is in Israel. But the names are not Jewish names. Can we say that this is a good document? But don't worry about the witnesses on the get. We're just going to rely on Eidei Masira. Right, Alexander. So we'll just rely on the witnesses that saw the delivery. Can we do that? Amalei. So Rabbi Yochanan says, we've had something similar to this, but not exactly what you're asking. What we had were the names Lucas and Lus. Now, we said that was okay. We said that was okay. Why? Because it's totally unambiguously not Jewish names, and we're not going to confuse and use them for the Eidei Masir. We know that there were other Eidei Masir. It's only Lucas and Lus. Lucas is probably like Luke, like.
But those are group names, no? In
Yeah.
origin. It says over here that it actually means like wolf. And
Yeah,
lion
Lucas is, it means a wolf.
in Greek, so they're Greek names.
Right.
Hence
Right. Right. Yeah, we have that other Gemara in Sukkah where it said Lucas. Remember the girl that was Miriam Basbilga? She was banging on the Mizbeach. Says, wolf, wolf, how long are you gonna consume the? Remember that? End of Sukkah. Lucas. Anyway, that's a name. Lucas is wolf. But we said that was okay because the Jewish people didn't use that name. Dafka Lucas Veluslesh Yisrael Damascus Messiah, Shmasach and the Shlich Yisrael Damascus Messiah. But if it would have been other names that would be ambiguous, we wouldn't accept it. Okay. So we have the same story from Rabbi Yochanan, that there would be a problem if the names are not clearly non-Jewish names. Gittin Daf Medina Sayam Beidem Chasumen Alayam Afkish Hashem Masem Kashem Sev Kam Ksherim Neshrei Yisrael Shabbachuslar Hashem Masem Kashem Sev Dikechavim. We say now that we have a brisa, the Tosefta, that says Gittin that come from overseas, where the names are non-Jewish names in it, and even though the names are not Jewish names, so we say that it's kosher. We add in because most of the people overseas and Chutz La'aretz, they have also non-Jewish names. So we say it's kosher, even though the names look not Jewish, but we say it's kosher. Our question is, why did Rabbi Yochanan say that it's only kosher if it's Lucas Velus, only specifically those names? Turns out that other names are also fine. It says over there, it's because outside the land of Israel, we have the other. It was common for Jewish people to have non-Jewish names.
Right.
In Israel, it wasn't common. So we needed names that were clearly not Jewish. But coming from outside of Israel, then it's fine, even if the names don't look Jewish. Outside of Israel, we can use even non-Jewish names that are not specific. We can use names that aren't Jewish, and we assume that they're Jewish anyway.
A lot of people, when they moved to Israel, they changed their names from the foreign names to clearly Jewish names.
The last names become Jewish names.
Yeah,
You're saying
they
even
changed
the first names?
everything. They
Oh.
changed. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Joe McCarthy became Shmuel.
Uh-huh.
To become more in the land.
Uh-huh.
Is that because they were following this idea? That's where this idea
Right.
is. If you live in Eretz Israel, your name is.
You have a Jewish name.
Yeah.
Well, it has to do with you're amongst other people, and you wanted the name to match to fit in. If you were outside of Israel.
Right.
Some say that what actually happened here was that Rabbi Yochanan was being asked by Rish Lakish if the get is coming from overseas, and Rabbi Yochanan answers exactly what the Brisa says, that if coming from overseas, it's still going to be kosher. And the concept of Lucas and Lus, that wasn't actually part of this discussion. Some have it a little different. Okay. Ready? New Mishnah. New topic, but it doesn't get easier. It's a very interesting discussion coming up. Very interesting discussion.
This is where the rabbis couples come with problems. They say you can work. They won't give you get. It's just too hard.
I read the Silver Era, about Reblazer Silver. Remember Reblazer Silver? He was a rabbi in Cincinnati. He was an Orthodox rabbi. He considered himself the chief rabbi of America. And it's a good book, actually. The Silver Era. It's like the history, American rabbinate history. So
Was he considered the chief rabbi of America? Or
he considered himself. I don't know what everyone else felt, but
So
he
he
was a big shot.
E-R-A or E-R-R-O-R?
Feinstein was the
Well, that's another, that a lot of people considered him, but he didn't
Oh.
consider himself. He had a small yeshiva, and, but anyway, this was like for political reasons. He would go around and he represented the Jewish people. But there was a story in there about he didn't want to do Gittin when he was a young man. He didn't want to do it. It's a whole thing. And anyway, there was someone that agreed to give his wife a get, so he called the guy from New York or wherever it was to come give the get, and then the guy came, and there was a problem with it, and the guy changed his mind. They had to do it again, and this, he said, "That's it. I'm doing that." So, he said sometimes you need to do a get like on the spot. It can't be like an emergency Gittin. Person agrees, and you got to get it done.
So he made another guess.
This because of the problem that he had by always trying to bring in an outsider to do it again. He said that he's going to do it on his own. He was a big scholar.
He wanted the job done right.
Okay,
That's the story.
that was the story from there. So when he started to do Gittin was. And there was a funny story about one of the places where he was the rabbi. So he was sitting in the shul and he was learning. And anyway, the president of the shul came in, sees him learning, got very upset. Called a meeting, he fired him. Said, "We want a rabbi that already studied." Yeah. So, someone that says new Mishnah, Haimer, 10 gets Eli Ishti v'shtar shechus el abdi. Someone tells the messenger, "Give this get to my wife," or he says, "Give this." He tells the messenger, "Give this deed of manumission, document of manumission to my slave." Well, at a certain point, the messenger has it, and then the guy retracts. The guy decides to retract from both of them. Yachzer, he's able to retract. Divrei Reb Meir, that's Reb Meir's opinion. We're going to see Reb Meir holds that because it's to the wife's detriment to be divorced, and it's also to the slave's detriment to be free. It's better for the slave to be a slave than to be free. So until the slave actually, we're going to have to see why, because that's a little odd, right? But until the slave gets the document, no one else acquires it on behalf of the slave. No one else can acquire it on behalf of the wife.
Doesn't this contradict what we learned earlier where the man said, "Get rid of all my nechassim and my slave," because he thought he was on his deathbed, and then he got well when he said, "No, it's nechassim come back, the slave remains free."
Yeah. We learned that the slave remains free
So why doesn't that apply?
because that was a divrei shchiv meirah. By a shchiv meirah, a person on his deathbed, whatever he says is as if it's done. So he already had freed the slave, but over here, there's a document that needs to reach the slave. Here, it needs to go through the normal order of things. That's a good point. So if we don't say that the messenger had accepted it on behalf of the wife or on behalf of the slave, because the messenger can't accept it. The messenger is just a regular courier that's going to give the document over to them, and only when they receive it are they going to be divorced or freed. Okay, the Chacham say, well, depends. If it's a marriage, if it's a divorce document, then you could retract it, because the messenger does not receive the document, and which means that it's to the detriment of a woman to be divorced, and you can't do anything to her detriment without her agreeing. But not by freeing the slave. The Chacham say it's to the benefit of the slave to be freed, and so therefore the messenger acquired on behalf of the slave. Seems logical in our minds. Because a person can do something to the betterment of a person, even if he's not there, but he can't do anything to his detriment unless he's there. So that would mean that he can acquire it on behalf of the slave, because that's to his benefit. We're talking about perfectly financial reasons. If a person says, "I'm not going to support my wife," he's not allowed to do that. But if a person is going to say, "I'm not going to support my slave," he is allowed to do that, which means that the slave has absolutely no benefit from being a slave. well, at least he gets a good meal every day. He doesn't even get a good meal every day. It's not like, the guys that want to go to prison because at least they know they'll have medical and whatever.
The best medical.
And although they complain about it, they don't. I don't think they really have such good medical.
They're entitled to the best medical.
Yeah.
The only group in the entire United States outside of the rich who can afford country medicine is that the only group of people who are entitled to the best medical care.
Wow. Whenever I go to the prison, the guys over there complain that
They complain.
that they. Oh, really? Is that what they do?
No,
For dental stuff, they go to the prison?
Oh, crown. I thought you said crowd.
no, I've heard that crowns and stuff like that. Dental work is very expensive, so.
Yeah.
It's like the people join the military now who want to be transgendered. It's very expensive, over $100,000. But I'm just saying, because now the law says there's some stipulations.
Oh, really?
Government makes these rules.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize that was part of this. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Right. Hanukkah. He has to get gifts. If the slave is freed, he has to get gifts. Okay, but here what we're saying is that is it possible for a husband? Is it possible for a husband not to support his wife? The answer is no. He has to support his wife. So when the wife gets divorced, she's basically losing her support. But if a master doesn't need to support a slave, and when he lets him free, it's not like he's losing support. He's actually just gaining freedom. He never had support anyway. The master didn't have to feed him. Yeah, the master doesn't have to feed the slave, according to this.
When he's the slave, the master has to feed him. But when he's
No,
free, he doesn't.
according to this, what it sounds like,
It's in
he doesn't want
Torah.
to. But you'll see. Amalahem, they said back to him, it is to the slave's detriment. Says why? Are you paisalas abdi min truma? Shem should paisalas this thing. And when he frees the slave can't eat truma anymore. If he was a kayan, the slave can eat truma. Now when he's free, talking about only Eved Kanani, of course. Eved Ivri is not allowed to eat truma. Eved Kanani is yes allowed to eat truma. It's like counterintuitive. But whatever the case is, so he is losing out. Says Amalai Vneshu Kinyani. Okay, we're gonna have to see what they're answering. Saying that's only because he's a possession. He's a possession of the master. Okay. Yosef Rav Huna Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Kamid Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Huna and Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef are sitting in front of Rav Yirmiyah. Yosef Rav Yirmiyah become a namnim. Rav Yirmiyah was dozing off. Yosef Rav Huna became Amar. And Rav Huna said, Shmami Nami de Rabbanan, we see from the rabbis that a types of Balchoiv kana. Big discussion in Bab Metzia. If you can be typhus the Balchayiv, Makim Shachav La'achirim. What that means is that let's say Ruvain owes Shimon money. Levi walks by Ruvain's property and says, my friend Shimon is owed money by Ruvain. I see Ruvain has a new delivery, something coming to the house. I'll take it and I'll give it to Shimon. In other words, he's taking property from Ruvain, possessions from Ruvain, to pay Shimon's. Now, the problem with that is that if Shimon himself would come and take it, so Shimon would say, look, you owe me money, and this is my things, and I'm gonna exactly what he's allowed to take. There's a lot of halachas. He can take his whatever, but Shimon would be able to come. But here it's Levi coming. Levi's taking it on behalf of Shimon. Now, it could be that Reuven also owes to Yisachar and Zavula and Yehuda. Yisachar, he owes to a bunch of people. So this outsider mixes in just for Shimon to get Shimon's money back. Meanwhile, other people are losing out because they could have split it equally or whatever. And who are you? You're not even one of the guys. Okay. Well, what we're seeing from the Rabbanan, that the Rabbanan say that the messenger can take the document on behalf of the slave, that means that it's like Levi coming over and taking something from Reuven on behalf of Shimon. Here, the messenger is taking something on behalf of the slave. He's not even the slave, taking it on behalf of the slave. And it's to the detriment of the master, because the master is now losing his slave, and he's taking it on his behalf. So we see from the Rabbanan that Taifas Bal Chayv is kana. You can actually take something for Bal Chayv, even though you're an outsider. Even if it's to the detriment of other people. In the case of the debt, it would be that there were other creditors. In our case, we're talking about even though it's to the detriment of the owner, he's losing the slave. Amalayin, he says yes. In the meantime, Rabbi Yirmiyah wakes up. He says, children, I don't know how old they are, but call some children. Rabbi Yochanan says, he does not acquire. Exactly the opposite, Rav Huna, of what you're saying. You're talking about our Mishnah. Anyone that says give it, as if he's saying acquire it. He's not grabbing it on behalf of someone else. The person said that you should take it on behalf of someone else. The question is, can he take it on his behalf? Then not necessarily so. Right? So he's not grabbing it away from the master. The master agrees for him to acquire it on behalf of the slave. Yeah.
Provided that
the slave really wants it.
As long as it's not money.
Yes. Provided that the slave really wants it. But he's saying Zechu means take it on his behalf. He said Tenu, but he means Zechu. Tenu means give, and Zechu means acquire. He said give, but he really means acquire. No problem for the messenger to take it on behalf of the slave. Okay. So Amar Rav Chisda. Chisda says, this concept of grabbing someone on behalf of something on behalf of a creditor, even though there's other creditors there that would be losing out, is actually machlekes in Masechtas Peya. Between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanan, the Tanana was taught in the Mishnah. Let's say you have the owner of the property is going around into his own field and taking the peya from that he had left for the poor, and he's taking it on behalf for a certain poor person. It says, Harezu lepleniani. I'm taking this on behalf of so-and-so, the poor guy. Rabbi Lezer says that he acquired it. Chachamim say that that's actually not true. He did not acquire it because this was put there, this was left there on behalf of all the poor people. And how can one person that's not even poor take it on behalf of another poor person when there's other people there that have the rights to it? It's Taifas L'Bal Chayv, B'Makom Shechav L'Acherim. You're grabbing for a creditor in places where there's other creditors there that are going to lose out because of this. You're taking for one individual poor person that's not even here. You have no rights to it. If that poor person was here, fine, but he's not here. You're taking it on his behalf, and other poor people are losing out.
That applies to bread in front.
No, because the poor person can take the peya. Every person can take the bread for whatever.
Only the poor person can take it.
Only the poor person. But over here, everyone has rights to it. It's you have your own rights to it. So you can take it on behalf of someone else. That's what it appears. At least from this, we don't have any proof. Amar Meimar v'Teimar Rav Papa, Meimar, and some say Rav Papa says that what Rav Chisda just said, that Taifas L'Bal Chayv, Makom Shechav L'Achem, grabbing on behalf of a creditor in places where it's to the detriment of other creditors, he says that's a machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanan. It's not actually so. Why? Because Dilma Laihi, maybe it's actually different on top of 12a. Adkan like Rabbi Lezer Hassam. Why did Rabbi Lezer say over there that he's allowed to take it? The migudi by mafkalein nechsev haviyanei b'chazilei migud zachal nafshei zachal lechavri. If you're allowed to take it for yourself, you're also allowed to take it for someone else. Now, this guy is a rich guy. How could he take it for himself? Well, since theoretically he could have made all his property ownerless and become a poor man in 1 second, so theoretically he has the rights to it because if he wants, he can make everything ownerless and he's a poor man. but he didn't. But Rebbe Lezer holds that because he could have, so that gives him potentially the rights to it. Once he has the rights to it, then he can take for the other guy as well. But over here, when we're talking about the shtar shichrer, where the document of manumission, where the person's taking it on behalf of the slave to the detriment of the owner, he says, over here, this is different. He cannot become a slave and take it on his behalf. He's just a messenger. So how do you know that Rabbi Eliezer rather would agree that that it's typus the balchayim lachem? How would you know he would hold it? He only holds it by paya because the person has the rights to it himself theoretically if he makes everything on us.
Question.
Yeah.
During Shemitah, side question, sidebar. During Shemitah year, when the person makes his field, he's still allowed to pick up
Just
stuff
only like
everybody else,
like
just
everyone
for the
else.
needs of the day. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
You can't store it.
So it's similar to this.
Right.
Okay, I'm taking off now.
Safe line. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get halfway down the next summit.
Flag is on and Kim does
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Okay.
Why?
They said Siggesund.
I said flag is on.
Flag is on.
Yeah, forward is on.
Ferguson. Okay. I don't know where Naphtali is. Nah, can't be. Okay. Aval Loi. Okay, but Adkan, and maybe we can say the other way. Adkan like Kamri Rabbanan Hasamela the Ksiv Leisalaket Lani, Leisalaket Leilani, Aval Loi. The pasuk says, I think we actually read this over Yom Tov. It says something Leisalaket. You should not collect the leket ketzircha leisalaket. You should not take the stalks that fell. La'ani v'lager tasves. We should leave it for the poor. But the Gemara reads it together. You should not collect for the poor. It says you should not collect for the poor. It should be left. But we read it together like as if there's no period there. You should not collect it for the poor. It means you can't come in and collect it on behalf of the poor. So maybe over there's a special pasuk, and that's why the Rabbanan say that you can't do it. But in another case, maybe they would allow it. But over here, maybe you can be typhus for balchay. Over there's a special problem because of the pasuk. The Gemara says, Rabbi Lazar, what does Rabbi Eliezer say? He says you are allowed to collect for the poor. He says, over there, it's coming to tell us something else. Salakit lani means that even if the person who has the field is poor, does he have a property and he's poor? It's very possible. But he owns property, but he's still poor. He also has to leave paya, even though he can claim, why should I leave it? I'm poor. No, everyone is required to leave the paya for the poor, including the poor person himself that owns the property. Okay, now we're going to get into this discussion regarding person doesn't want to feed his slave. Is he allowed to do that? Now, I believe what's going to happen is like this. If he doesn't feed his slave, it's going to be like that guy that is training his horse to eat less and less. You know, every day a little bit less, a little bit less. He almost had it down to feeding it nothing. Would have been like the perfect horse without no overhead. You know, but then it just surprisingly died on him. So So if he doesn't feed his slave, he's not going to get much work out of him.
Right.
But it doesn't mean he has to feed him. The slave can theoretically go find his own food somewhere. Now, it's a question now that we're going to be discussing. Can a master actually say that to a slave? That I'm going to take what you work. You work for me. You work in the field. The slave says, where am I going to eat? He says, you'll figure that out on your own. He has to go beg. A Jewish slave. It's the non-Jewish slave. This is according to one opinion. This is a possibility that maybe he can do this.
But isn't the slave who's working in a field that is produce allowed to eat the produce?
Oh, probably is allowed to eat while he works if he's working in that type of thing. let's say he's working in the,
You don't, you have to
in
be a
the,
slave to eat.
what's it called, those shops?
Sweatshops.
Sweatshops. There's nothing to eat.
And you have to
You
be a
eat by
slave.
the sweat of your brow. Yes, get that.
Sounds like this. Well, how are we getting into this? Because we're saying that, I'm sorry, you were saying something?
No, I don't think you necessarily, like, you could not even be a slave, you just work for someone.
Oh.
I think it says like in the Torah, like if you're working for someone in a restaurant, I'll take it. I mean,
Right.
I don't know nowadays.
Right. If it's finished food, you're supposed
Yeah.
to be able to eat.
If you're in someone thing, like fix some grapes.
Right. Right. You're not supposed to take it home.
Yeah.
Right. So, so here, how are we getting into this? Because we're saying that the slave has no benefit from being a slave because the master didn't have to feed him anyway while he was a slave. Otherwise, we're saying that the person can take the document on behalf of the slave, according to the Rabbana.
Right.
Take the document on behalf of the slave because it's only to his benefit, not to
Yeah,
his detriment. But if the master had to feed him, then it wouldn't be to his benefit because of at least then he would be getting a meal that he had to have. Yeah, okay. So Shamet Mina, we learned from this. Shamet Mina, we learned from this. Obviously, the master can say, "Work for me, and I don't have to feed you." Now we take this as a question because we know that this is a discussion, and it's not really a resolved discussion. So, but if our Mishnah says clearly that a master doesn't have to feed a slave, then why was this even a discussion? We have it clearly in the Mishnah. So Gemara says, no. And here, what are we dealing with? Take what the master tells the slave is you can use your own income to support yourself, which is different.
Slave receives.
The slave does work. The master doesn't want to feed the slave. So what's going to happen here is the master tells the slave that, look, you can make a good living, just feed yourself.
Is he suggesting that he's going to eat from his labor?
He's going to work for someone else. And
Oh,
he's going
literally
to,
working for someone else.
and the slave is going to bring in income to the master only after his food was provided for. So let's say he earns, I don't know, $50 a day. So after he gets his $25 that he needs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so then the other 25 goes to the master. He's a slave, but not saying that I'm not feeding you. So what's coming out now is like this. Why is it that it's to the detriment, it's to the benefit of the slave to be free? Because the master's not providing him with food anyway. Now, does that mean that the master doesn't have to provide him with food? No. What it means is over here is that the master is telling him that you can use your own income to provide for your food. Not that the master is taking everything and leaving him with nothing. Right? We thought that that's what it meant. Turns out it's not what it means. Could be that the master is telling him you can use your own income to feed
But in
yourself.
this example, it seems like he's working. One, he's
Yeah.
actually being hired.
Right. He's working for two people. Yeah. I mean, there's other ways of explaining this, but I mean, that's a possibility. The Gemara says, okay, what's going on over here? We had in the Mishnah a contrast between a divorce document and a deed of manumission, where the Rabbanan said that when you give the document of divorce to the messenger to bring it, the woman is not divorced until she receives it. When you give the deed of manumission to the messenger to bring it, the slave is automatically freed right away. He said, because it's to his benefit to be free, but by the woman not. So in order to explain what's going on by the slave, we said that the slave actually keeps his own income in order to feed himself. And we're saying that that's to his benefit now to be free because he has his own income anyway. It says, so why is it not to the benefit of the wife? By the wife, it may be the same story. Like you're making a contrast. So maybe he told the wife, I'm not going to support you, but you can earn your own living and keep your own income and you support yourself. So now why isn't it to her benefit to be divorced? She'll be able to she anyways doesn't get food from him. Yeah, but if he decides that he's going to give her in the ksuba, he would be obligated if she didn't have enough income. But here she has enough income; she can support herself. So if you want to make a contrast, then we need all the variables to be the same, except for the fact that one's a wife and one's a slave. That's the only thing we want different. We don't want other things to be different. So if it's all the same, so then why can't he tell his wife, or why can't the messenger acquire the get on behalf of the wife?
Right.
Isha amayloi.
Mishnah here talks about they can retract the get or the bill of measure.
That's Rameya. Go one step further. Chachamim Maimrim, that by the
no,
wife.
in fact, it's in the case of the bill's divorce, but not in the case of
So according to that, and the reason sages said is because a person doesn't need to support his wife. A person needs to support his wife. He doesn't need to support his slave. We're asking, but if he doesn't need to support his slave because the slave is keeping their own income, so he doesn't need to support his wife if his wife is keeping her own income. The Gemara says, Isha de leisafka. We're talking about where the wife can't support herself. She can't earn enough to support herself. The Gemara says, Havanami de leisafik. Maybe the slave also can't earn enough to support himself. The Gemara says, Avda, the Nahum Krese, leishavia, lamari lamarte, lamai mitbai. Obviously, the slave can support himself because the slave that can't earn enough to feed himself is only a liability. It's only a, right? There's no benefit to that. Having a slave that costs more than he can make, right? That there's no, obviously the slave can. So, right, that's a bad business. So what we're saying now is that the wife is obviously the husband's going to, in our case, the husband's going to need to support his wife. And so that's why if for her to get divorced is to her detriment because she's going to lose some income. But the slave.
retracting is when you send a get for a bill and
And then you change your mind, yeah, while before it reaches him. You know, it's like when you click on the computer, you know, to buy
Yeah.
something, and then they give you 24 hours to change your ticket if you try to
So
get
you would
to
go,
buy it.
you go to the messenger.
Right. Sent on out.
Hopefully you
the
can
case
catch
of
him
a
before you
slave.
get there.
No, that's a case of a wife. The case of a slave, once they buy it, it's like.
So 24 hours after the wedding to decide if you want it.
No, there's no return policy.
Oh, there's no return.
The way.
Okay. Tashima, come and listen. Evet Shigola, we're going to discuss over here. Do you have to support the slave or not? Do you have to supply the slave with food? Evet Shigola Lari Miklat, a slave that killed by mistake. Okay, killed someone by mistake. What's the halacha if someone kills by mistake? They have to go to the city of refuge, just like a regular Jewish person. Ein Rabbi Chayav Lazainai. The master does not need to send him income over there. He's in the city of refuge. The master doesn't need to support him. Not only that, but whatever income he does get goes back to the master. The Gemara says clearly, obviously, the master can tell the slave that you have to work for me and I don't have to support you.
Because he's in city.
This is in the city of refuge. We see this from an example of the city of refuge.
This is about
Ayer Mikla.
So that's what happens if someone mistakenly kills someone and they do another.
I'm not sure. It sounds like a Gemara. I think the Gemara talks about that.
Sure.
I think they do
That's a
have. I
sideline.
think they do have to actually go to another city, a different one. The Gemara says it's not a good proof because says no. We're talking about the same thing, saying keep your income so that you'll be able to support yourself. The Gemara says no, it doesn't say that. It says so why is he saying that the master keeps his income, the work of his hands? Says, oh, that's la dafa. That's the extra income on top of after the slave has enough support, whatever extra, whatever he's going to put into a savings, the master keeps. Where it says hadafa pshita, of course the master keeps that. Why do you have to tell me the master keeps the extra savings that the slave earns? It says, okay, goes like this. Well, if the slave does not earn enough, is the master going to fill in the extra? No. Slave is going to have to figure it out. The master says, you don't have to work for me until you feed you, I'm not taking your income until after your meals are taken care of. Then what's left over, I'm going to take. Now we could say to the slave could say like this: look, the master's not going to fill in when I'm on a day that it's short, a rainy day. I'm going to save up from the days that I have extra for those rainy days when I don't fill in. So the savings is just going to grow and grow and grow, and then the slave is going to say, well, you never know how many rainy days they're going to be. It says the master is allowed to take all of the extra and not leave him anything for the rainy days. He just he has to go find work in those days, and tough luck. He's a slave, so he really has no savings. The slave has no savings, but it doesn't mean that the master is allowed to tell him, "I'm taking all your income, and I'm not feeding you either." No, he's telling him that your income is going to support yourself.
Does we spoke about this in does someone's wife have any
Yeah.
savings, like with her own hands? I think.
Right,
spoke about
right.
it.
We had this was in Ksubas, big discussion in Ksubas about the wife's earnings and her keeping it and
Right.
all of this. What she can say, I don't need your food. I'll take care of myself. All of that. That was a big discussion. This is very relevant. This Gemara and not Gemara have to be compare them, because that's the okay. Now we're holding by where the master is not taking the slave's income because the slave is going to support himself. But the only thing the master is taking is the extra that he has, the saving. So why do you give me a case about an Ari Miklat? It says over there, it says by the Ari Miklat, the person runs to one of those cities and he lives over there, which means maybe we should have to give him extra earnings, because it says over there the word "and he lives," which means maybe we need to give him a savings for those rainy days, because that's the halacha. The Ari Miklat is supposed to be provided for. So Kamash Malan comes to teach us that he still doesn't need a savings. That's why we had a bigger chiddush. Because normally he can't take his income anyway. He has to be able to support himself. And it's only the extras. And the same thing applies to an Ari Miklat. I would have thought where I need to give him a savings, I don't have to give him a savings. But the problem is that if you read further, it says Avalisha should go Salari Miklat, that if a woman is killed by mistake, she killed someone by mistake, she has to go to the Ari Miklat. The husband needs to sustain her. Michlal, that implies the Layamarla. That a husband cannot tell his wife, keep your own income. The Yamarla Baila, because if the husband can tell his wife, keep your own income, so my chayev, let the wife earn her own income in the Ari Miklat and sustain herself. We need the Seifa de Layamarla. And since we're talking about now by the wife, he's not telling her to keep her own income. So then probably by the slave, he also didn't tell him to keep his own income. Umar says, really, he did tell the wife, keep her own income. Really, he did tell the slave, keep his own income. But the woman doesn't have enough income to support herself. She needs extra, so the husband is obligated to fill that in. By the slave, he's not obligated. The problem is that the Seif it says, but if he tells his wife that you can keep your own income and support yourself, then he doesn't have to support her. That implies the Reisha D'Layamala, that he didn't tell that to her before. It's only over here where he's telling it to her. And if he didn't tell it to her before, then probably he's not telling the slave either. It says Hachikamer. This is what it means. The Immisafkis. But if she does earn enough, then he's able to tell her that she can keep her own income and he doesn't need to support her because she's in an Ari Miklat for the time being. Umar says, if she can support herself, what's the big deal? Obviously, you can do that. Mashma, I could have thought that maybe he cannot tell his wife that she should support herself while she's in the mikvah, because it's better for a woman to be inside and not to go out to work. Mashmalan, that he can tell it to her when she's in the mikvah that she has to support herself.
Husband doesn't go to the Yom Kippur.
Yeah, this is a little surprising, right? Apparently, he doesn't have to go.
He's got property that he's got a job in another city.
Yeah.
She goes because she killed somebody.
Yeah. That's a good question. Good question. You know, if a student kills, the teacher has to go together with him. Yeah. Probably the kids stay with the father unless they need the mother. All 10 of them. 22. Well, how many were in the lady in the shoe?
Yeah, the only lady was in a shoe.
How many kids were there? In that thing? I don't know. I don't remember the thing.
I don't know, but she knew how to.
Okay. Lema Ketanai. Let's say that this discussion is actually Machlekes Tanaim. Talking about if a husband can tell his wife, or if the person can tell a slave. But really, we're talking about the person can tell his slave, you have to work for me. Not the husband telling. The person can tell his slave, you have to work for me, and I'm not supporting you anyway. He owns it.
You could say that.
Figure out your own.
So far, we don't have the proof.
Oh,
Because we thought that he could say that. But turns out that he's telling the slave that you're going to support yourself. I'm not going to take your income.
Also on the side for someone else.
So, if he's making his own income, then yes. But the question is, can he do it even though the owner is taking the income? It's still making him go collect.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem right. But anyway, let's take a look. A slave can tell the master in days of famine, either give me food or let me go free. It's up to the master. The master can decide on that.
Wow.
You see, according to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, the slave can actually get his own freedom when the master can't support him anymore. The Chum say no, it's up to the master. My labba kamifli, it must be that the machlekes between Reb Shimon ben Gamliel and the Chum is the following: the Mar Savar, the sages hold yachol, that the master can tell the slave, "I'm not supporting you, and tough luck, you still have to work for me." Mar Savar any yachol. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that you can't tell that to the slave, that I'm not supporting, you have to work for me. If you're not supporting, then he has to be able to at least keep his own income.
The whole issue of having a slave anyways, because the slave maybe stole something.
That's a Jewish slave. That's a Jewish slave. Here we're talking about that he bought a slave on the slave market.
Okay.
To get work out of him.
To get work out of it.
Yeah, and it's a family year. You can't get any work out of him. I still own you, but you feed yourself.
Right. But Tizbara, do you really think that this is what's going on? Hi, shouldn't have said either support me, give me food, or set me free. It should have said either support me or let me keep my own income so I can support myself. That's exactly what we're talking about. So, and it didn't say that. But another question is, why does this case have to be in the days of a famine? This could be any time. Rather, what we're talking about, talking about where the master told the slave, you can try to support yourself, which means keep your own income. I'm not supporting you right now. You can keep your own income and you support yourself. And it was in the days of a famine, he wasn't able to support himself. Food was too expensive. So he tells the master, he says, look, either you come in and fill in what the income that I'm not earning, or just let me go free. Gamliel says, what's going to be better if he's free? Because people are going to see him. He's a free man. He can't support himself. They're going to give him more tzedakah. But Rabbanan Sabri, Mandam Rachim Necharia, Eben Nami Rachumim Merachim. The Rabbanan say that whoever is going to give tzedakah to a free man is also going to give tzedakah to a slave. So he has no benefit from being free, according to the. Okay. Tashema.
At the end of it, or you keep going?
We're still looking for. Can the master say this? Now we're going to quote the opinion of Rav, and then we have another opinion of Rav, and then we're going to have Rabbi Yochanan. Tashema. Dama Rav. Rav says, "Amakdish yidei avdei." Someone says like this. He wants to give a gift to the Beis Hamikdash. He says, I'm going to give all the work of this slave should belong to the Beis Hamikdash. Now, what's going to happen now is that whenever this slave is going to work, it's going to automatically become hektish. Whatever he does. Let's say his job is to string pearls. Or something. Whatever increase of value he gets, whatever he's doing, he's supposed to, I don't know, cut wood. Whatever increase of value that there is, automatically it goes to the Beis Hamikdash. So how's the slave going to eat? So it goes like this. He borrows money, and he eats, which is no problem. That's not considered hektish yet. But he said then when he works, so pereya, then he pays it up. He pays back his debt. He can't work because it's going to become hektish. And he won't have the income if he just works, because it's everything that he earns becomes hektish. What he does is he borrows to eat, and then when he works, the money's not his. The money to become hektish. Well, actually, what he's going to do is he's going to give it back less than a pruta each time, so it never becomes hektish, and he's going to be able to pay back his debt. So the only way he can do this is with the credit card. He has to borrow to eat, and then he pays back that credit card or that person that's lending him. Shmami, no, whatever the case is, obviously the master. You see how the slave has to eat? He has to borrow. Obviously, the master told him that I'm not feeding you. Seems like the master can say, I'm not feeding you. You do work and I'm not feeding you. Umar says, talking about where the master is giving him food. So then why is he borrowing? And why is he borrowing to eat? Says La Dafa. He wants extra food. Wants to get extra food, the master gives him whatever the meals are, but he wants extra food. So the Gemara says, hektish. Why doesn't hektish say, you see, really, what's going on now is he's really stealing from hektish, because he doesn't need this extra food. He just wants extra food. Let hektish tell him that, look at what you're doing. You're borrowing and paying back using my money. Hektish, theoretically, hektish is talking. Means the Beis Hamikdash is saying, you're using my money to pay back this for your extra snacks. The Gemara says, hektish kufeini chalei. No, hektish wants him to have this. Because they want their slave, or avdei probably means his work. They want their slave to be healthy. They want him to have the extra food. Gemara asks, Isu pereya. He works and then he pays back. How does that work? Kama kadosh. Everything he works automatically becomes hektish before he pays it back. The Gemara says, he's paying it back less than a shava pruta, less than the smallest coin, so it never becomes hektish because he pays it back in such small increments. This also makes sense to say that the master is feeding him. That's what we're talking about. In other words, we don't have a proof from Rav that the master is not feeding the slave. Because Rav has another statement. The other statement goes like this: someone that makes hektish the work of his slave. That slave is allowed to do work and eat. Because if he doesn't do work, who's going to work for him? Who's going to give him food? Now, what we could say is like this: why over here in the second statement of Rav is the person allowed to do work and eat? It must be because in the first statement of Rav, the master was feeding him. And that's why he's not allowed to just do work and eat. But over here, because the master is not feeding him, because the master is not feeding him, that's why he's allowed to do work. How is there a heter?
From the work of his hands.
He's able to eat from the work of his hands. If you're going to say that the first case was when the master wasn't feeding him, because the master is allowed to tell him, I don't have to feed you. So now, how does it say, but if he doesn't work, who's going to work for him? Who's going to feed him? What do you mean, who's going to feed him? He doesn't, no one has to feed him. That's the rule. If you just tell me the rule is that the master doesn't have to feed him. We see from this, at least according to Rav, that that a master cannot tell a slave that you have to do work and I'm not feeding you anyway. If the master is not going to feed him, he has to allow him to keep his own income. That's what we see from Rav.
Is this again from working with another master? Or is this?
Yeah, we're working with another master. The slave is just another tool to bring in income. So he has to, if he's not going to feed him, then the person has to be able to earn his own income.
I had no idea that the slave could have worked for multiple people, because I had the impression that this slave was the property completely by the owner. And that's
No, it is the property of the owner, and the owner can use him either in his own field, or he can tell him that he's going to lend him out as a cleaning lady to earn income.
But if he leases him out, then let's say the guy is really skilled. He earns a lot of money. It all goes to the master. The master pays him a really crummy lunch.
Right.
So he makes, his idea is to extract as much as
doesn't
he
even have to
can.
give
Right.
him anyone.
Turns out, no,
Yes,
we're
give him
saying now he
something.
does have to give.
Oh,
If he's not going to give him, at least according to Rav, if he's not going to give him, he has to allow him to use his own income to buy his own.
Which could be sumptuous. He could use all his income. Like, the
They
master
probably
says-
have to make a price because it's property, still is property. Okay, now the Gemara says, Tashima, we have a conclusion according to Rav. What about according to Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan says, let's say someone cuts off the hand of the slave of his friend slave. Does he have to pay? Well, it says, nice and shifter. He has to pay for the loss of work to the master. He has to also pay for the doctor bills. Who does he give it to?
Slave goes free.
That's if the master cut it off. This is someone else cutting off. So if the master injures the slave, he cuts off one of his limbs, the slave goes free. Now we were talking about where someone else came along and did this. So, and that slave is supported from tzedakah. You see from this, obviously, look at what's going on. The person that cut off the slave's hand, the slave can't do work. So he has to pay the deductibles and the loss of work to the master. That means the master gets the slave's income. It's not actually income, it's like compensation for his loss of income. Workers' compensation. The master gets that. And the slave gets nothing. The slave has to go to tzedakah and find food. Goes to go to the public soup kitchen. Well, this is what Rabbi Yochanan says. The Gemara says, here we're talking about the master is giving him food. So what does it mean he gets to get from tzedakah? Says la adafa, that's if he wants extra food. What does it mean that he gets supported or he gets sustained? Misparnas mi b'alim means you should get extra. Sounds like, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that a slave can actually be told that you have to do work for me and I'm not going to support you. So there's machlekes here, Rav and Rabbi Yochanan.
But I know this Bryce doesn't speak about a master who injures a slave. But if that's the case, and the slave does go free from his master's damage, it says that if a slave is free, that's worse off than being a slave. I think that was one of
Because
So.
it's worse off
I'm
because he
just
doesn't
not
get
sure
a
how
sustenance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure how that would.
Yeah, so that would only,
square
that would only fit according to Rav,
Uh-huh.
but according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the slave actually doesn't get anything. Yeah. Okay, let's leave it over here.